The most powerful weapon shaping America's future isn't a missile, a battleship, or even artificial intelligence. It's already inside your pocket, inside your PAR, inside the military systems designed to defend the nation. Hidden in plain sight are materials so critical that without them, the United States cannot build, power, or protect the modern world. These materials are rare earth minerals, and America is dangerously dependent on others for them. Every time an American unlocks a smartphone, drives an electric vehicle, or relies on GPS navigation, a silent supply chain stretches thousands of miles beyond U.S. borders. Rare earth minerals sit at the heart of this chain. They power jet fighters, missile guidance systems, satellites, wind turbines, data centers, and the batteries driving the clean energy transition. Without them, America's technological edge disappears. Yet, despite their importance, the United States gave up control. For decades, rare earths were treated as a low-priority issue, dirty, expensive, and politically inconvenient. Mining them produces toxic waste. Processing them involves radioactive byproducts. Environmental regulations made domestic production costly, slow, and unpopular. So America did what it often does in a globalized economy. It outsourced the problem. And while Washington looked elsewhere, another power was planning ahead. China invested heavily in rare earth mining and refining starting in the late 20th century. While U.S. mines shut down, Chinese operations expanded. While American companies focused on short-term profits, China built long-term capacity. It wasn't just digging minerals, it was mastering the entire supply chain, from extraction to processing to export. By the time U.S. leaders realized what was happening, the balance had already shifted. At its peak, China controlled more than 90% of the world's rare earth supply, but more importantly, it controlled the most complex and valuable step, refining. Even when rare earths were mined in other countries, they were often shipped to China for processing. America, the world's most advanced military power, had become dependent on a strategic rival for materials essential to its own defense. This vulnerability remained mostly invisible until it wasn't. In 2010, during a diplomatic dispute with Japan, China restricted rare earth exports. The shockwaves reached Washington immediately. Prices surged, manufacturers panicked, defense planners took notice. For the first time, the U.S. government confronted a sobering reality. America's technological backbone could be weakened without a single shot being fired. This wasn't just an economic issue, it was a national security crisis. Rare earths are embedded in F-35 fighter jets, precision-guided munitions, radar systems, and naval technology. They are essential to advanced weapons systems that form the backbone of U.S. military superiority. A disrupted supply chain doesn't just slow production, it threatens readiness, deterrence, and strategic credibility. And China knew it. Control over rare earths gave Beijing leverage in trade negotiations, diplomatic disputes, and strategic planning. Export restrictions didn't need to be permanent. The threat alone was powerful enough. Markets reacted. Allies worried. U.S. policymakers scrambled. America had built its future on an assumption that access would always be available. That assumption was now broken. By the late 2019s, rare earths entered the language of U.S. national strategy. They were no longer obscure industrial inputs, they were classified as critical minerals. Congressional hearings followed. Defense reports warned of supply chain risks. The Department of Defense acknowledged dependence on foreign sources for materials essential to weapons production. The question was no longer if this was a problem, but how America had allowed it to happen. The United States does have rare earth deposits. It has geology, technology, capital, and expertise. What it lacked was urgency. Domestic mining declined due to environmental concerns and cheaper foreign supply. Processing capacity vanished almost entirely. When America needed rare earths, it imported them, mostly from China. Rebuilding that capacity would not be easy. Mines take years to develop. Refineries take even longer. Environmental approvals, community opposition, and high startup costs slowed progress. Even reopening a single major mine could take a decade from planning to full production. China's advantage wasn't just scale, it was time. So Washington shifted strategy. Instead of relying on markets alone, the U.S. government began intervening directly. Defense funding was redirected towards critical minerals, strategic stockpiles were discussed and expanded. Rare earths became a pillar of industrial policy. America wasn't just trying to compete, it was trying to catch up. At the same time, the United States turned to allies. Australia, Canada, and Japan became central partners in securing supply chains. New agreements focused on shared processing facilities, joint research, and coordinated stockpiling. The goal was diversification, reducing dependence on any single country, especially one viewed as a strategic competitor. This marked a shift in American thinking. Globalization had once prioritized efficiency above all else. Now, resilience mattered. Cheap supply was no longer enough if it came with strategic risk. Rare earths forced the United States to rethink how power works in the modern world. And that rethink extended beyond economics. As electric vehicles and renewable energy became central to America's climate goals, demand for rare earths surged. The clean energy transition depended on materials America didn't fully control. Wind turbines, EV motors, and grid storage all required rare earth magnets. The future Washington envisioned was built on inputs it could not guarantee. This created a strategic paradox. To reduce dependence on fossil fuels, the United States increased dependence on rare earths, and without domestic control, that dependence became a vulnerability. The transition meant progress, but also exposure. In response, innovation accelerated. American scientists and engineers began searching for rare earth-free alternatives. New magnet designs were tested, recycling programs expanded, aiming to extract rare earths from old electronics and military equipment. Research funding increased. Universities and defense contractors raced to reduce reliance on fragile supply chains. But innovation has limits. Substitutes often perform worse. Recycling cannot meet rising demand. Stockpiles can only delay shortages, not eliminate them. For now, rare earths remain essential, and access remains uncertain. This uncertainty is shaping U.S. foreign policy in quiet but profound ways. Trade agreements now include mineral security clauses. Diplomatic relationships are strengthened or weakened based on access to resources. Regions once considered peripheral gain importance due to geological potential. Rare earth deposits influence strategic planning just as oil once did. And like oil, they carry the risk of conflict. As competition intensifies, export controls become tempting tools. Resource nationalism rises. Countries consider prioritizing domestic supply over global markets. In this environment, rare earths become bargaining chips, used to extract concessions, influence negotiations, and signal power. For the United States, the stakes are clear. This isn't about profit margins or consumer prices. It's about maintaining technological leadership, military readiness, and strategic independence. A nation that cannot secure the materials powering its systems cannot fully control its future. China understood this early. America is learning it now. The global struggle over rare earth minerals is quiet, technical, and complex, but its consequences are enormous. It will shape who builds the next generation of technology, who controls supply chains, who sets the rules of the emerging world order. For the United States, this is a race against time. Rebuild domestic capacity or remain dependent. Innovate alternatives or accept vulnerability. Strengthen alliances or risk isolation. The choices made today will echo for decades. Because the future of American power isn't just written in code or strategy documents, it's forged in mines, refineries, and supply chains hidden far from public view. And in the battle for the elements that power everything, the question isn't if rare earths matter. The question is if the United States can afford not to control them.